Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this annual Cadre Network check-in meeting. I'm Marcia Hovey, the Executive Director of Cadre. This is the second Cadre check-in meeting. We had one last week because there were some issues that we were finding out after the storm had passed about power outages and things that couldn't really wait until today. And so a lot of people came to that meeting, and after this meeting, I will send out an information sheet with everything that was shared at both meetings so that everyone's caught up. But I wanted to make sure that anyone that missed last week had a chance to share. And there will be some updated information because we learn new things every day. Okay, so there's a lot on the agenda, but it won't take 2 hours, I don't think. But if we want to talk 2 hours, I'm happy to do that if we're discussing things that are important to you. And so we did the introductions. If anybody needs closed captioning, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see some little dots that say captions. Or if you click on the dots, it says captions. You can ask to enable the captions, and I'll do that for you. If there's any problem with that not working. Here we go again with, I love my computer. If you need any help with that closed captioning, just call it out and we'll stop and make sure that we get that fixed before we go on. I'm going to give you just a quick Cadre overview of what we do during disasters, how we communicate with all of you. Throughout the session, I'll be sharing things that were brought up on the February 9th call so that you are getting the full picture, and then some new and expanded programs that I wanted to share. We'll have a representative about 10:30 from Los Gatos to talk about their program. I have a recorded message from San Jose because he was on the call last week, and I just figured I would play it again instead of having him have to give up 2 more hours. And City of Gilroy, the programs that they're doing right now, what Palo Alto's doing. Oh, Morgan Hill, I didn't write you on here, but I have some info on you too. And then if anyone else wants to share what other cities are doing or what you're doing to support the extreme weather conditions. And then we'll have some discussions after that about, and I was going to do breakout rooms, but since it's a smaller group, I think we can just share together how to support the unhoused. So if you're currently working with unhoused, how can you support them during a storm? And what do you do during a storm? And then also overnight warming centers and what it takes to be one, if you have questions about that, and then supporting the Red Cross shelters or the city shelters that get brought up if there is the need to evacuate the waterways or there's flooding in neighborhoods. So Cadre supports the disaster response and recovery efforts of nonprofits, faith-based government, and private organizations in Santa Clara County. So we were connected to everyone. I wanted to, for those of you that are businesses, I wanted to encourage you to also connect with the California Resiliency Alliance because they have a for-profit focus, and it's good to be connected to both of them. And the way that Cadre is organized, there are VOADs across the state, they're across the nation actually. VOAD stands for Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. So each organization that's on this call could be a voluntary organization active in disaster. It means that you don't have any legal requirement to respond to disaster, but you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. You have skills and abilities that government may not have, and you want to support the community during the disaster response. So for whatever reason, the VOAD network is also called VOAD. So Cadre is also a VOAD, and we're also not mandated to be here, but we are designated by Santa Clara County to be the coordinating network person. So we coordinate primarily with the VOADs in Northern California. We just had a meeting with them the other day. on that meeting is always state representatives and federal representatives because we have direct communication links to them. And then if we do speak obviously with Southern California too, and have been in contact with them because of the storms that they're having. Cadre is actually supporting San Diego's disaster response because we have a case management software that they're using so that everyone that's being served in the disaster is in a common database, so everyone knows who's getting what resources, and they can be evenly distributed. On the right side of the screen are the levels of the standardized emergency management system, which is how government is organized for disaster. Events always start at the field level. The first responders go out to address the event. If it's something that is bigger than they can handle, or it's going to require additional services to make it go away, then local government activates their emergency operations center. So each city, as well as the county, can have their emergency operations centers open. The county also wears the hat of being the representative of the operational area. Santa Clara County, all of the cities and the special districts are considered the operational area. And so Santa Clara County has coordinating roles when it comes to resources that are needed in the county. And then the state is divided into 3 regions. So we're in the coastal region. The coastal region will coordinate with the other 2 regions if we need resources that are beyond the capability of our region. And then the state emergency operations center would also activate, and then they're connected to FEMA. And so this communication, it goes right up the stairs and right down the stairs. They, in order to ensure that you're not duplicating requests or duplicating messages, they want the communication to flow up like this and down like this, and not have like the local government calling FEMA. So that's how they work. Ours is a little bit more streamlined because we're always on the calls together, but they both work really well and have for a long time. I just wanted to share the weather report for us for this weekend. You can see the South Bay is kind of a little more than halfway down the screen. So it rained yesterday. It's supposed to rain today. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. And then you can see that it gets to be moderate over the weekend and into Monday, always on the weekend, because we don't want to have real days off. So rain and wind up to 25 miles an hour, I believe. And then it tapers off again on Tuesday. You can get this information on the Weather Service website or on Cadre's website. We have a link to the Weather Service. So if you happen to be checking out the other resources on the Cadre page, you can go right to it. All right, Cadre has a duty officer line. So if in the middle of the night you become aware of an emergency situation or a situation that you're going to respond to, or that you know that the community's been impacted and that the Cadre network can help, you can call that number, 408-622-0822. I mostly answer that line, but we do sometimes have other people on call to do that. You can also send us an email that at this cadreeoc@gmail.com that we use to try to keep the emergency information separate from our day-to-day information so that we don't miss something. We are transitioning that email over the course of this year to cadreeoc@cadresv.org. So you can send to either one. They're both monitored. This, the bottom of the page is a picture of part of the Cadre homepage. If you go to the announcements section, if there is an emergency going on and we have not, and you're not sure if we've activated or if we're going to have a coordination call or a coordination meeting, you can look under the announcements and you will find that information. Oh, Jackie wants to raise her hand. Yeah, sometimes I don't know where the raise hand button goes. Go ahead, Jackie.
Sorry, I was trying to
Your
get you on
reactions.
the slide before, just for our county alone and regarding the weather. We are having an OA call, but our focus here in the county right now is the oversaturation of the soils because of all the past rains. So I just wanted to give a focus of the weather of what we're focusing on here in our county alone. So the rains that are impacting this weekend is one of the major focuses, but the second one is the oversaturation of soils that has
Okay.
produced landslides and mudslides. So I just wanted to
Yeah.
give the county focus on that.
Thank you. And Cadre does participate on those calls as well. So we'll make sure that any updates get out to the membership. So even though this is not a big storm, because the ground is very saturated, it increases the possibility of landslides. It increases the possibility of trees coming down. 25-mile-an-hour winds could topple trees if the ground is that saturated. So just still use caution. Don't drive over any wires that are on the ground, and report any down trees as soon as possible to keep the roads open for the first responders. Right. This page, so after ongoing during the emergency, if you click on the response and relief page, something will happen here's the response and relief page. And it has down at the bottom a variety of different icons. If you click on the flood icon, which is the only one that's a color right now, all the others are grayed out, then you come to the flood response page. These are links to information that may be beneficial to you in the event of a disaster. We have an earthquake page, we have a public safety power shutoff page. So this should be things that are relevant to if we have flooding or trees down. So any alerts and warning, how to register for alerts and warnings. Before the flooding, it talks about how to prepare your home or your business for flooding. It also has a link to the weather service there so that you can check what the current weather is, resources for access and functional needs. The city, town, county, and special districts, we have links to all of the information that they share during disasters, so you can kind of see it all in one place, as well as power outages, road closures, sandbag information, shelters, unmet needs, and warming centers. The warming center links to the county's website that has all of the warming centers that they've been told about. And so that's another thing, is we want to make sure if you're doing something that we're aware of it, so that we can support you and include you in discussions if that's necessary. Okay, I'm going to pop back one if I can. Of course not.
Let me ask, Marcia, while you're fishing around there, let me ask,
Yep.
if people do want to open a warming center, how would they get that on the list that's on the county?
We're going to talk about that. We're going to
Okay.
talk about that during the end of this meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so the other two ways to communicate, there's this really cool one that I just discovered recently. It's the Santa Clara County Service Provider Network. If you want to be part of it, what they primarily do is different organizations that are working with clients. If they have a need that a client has and they don't know where to get it, they go on there and say, does anybody know where to get this resource? And somebody knows every time. So it's a lot of emails, but it's really, if you are serving clients, it would be good to be attached to that. I can see that it could have a huge value in a disaster. I can also see that it might be overwhelming in a disaster, which is why I wanted to show you that Cadre on their Facebook page. I know nobody uses Facebook, but that's why it's perfect for us. We have groups by function. And so if you are focused on house support or in-kind donations or case management, you can join those groups, and you could actually talk and coordinate in real time during a disaster, assuming our internet is still working, which is just another way that we can communicate if other things are failing and we're not sure what we're going to do next. Okay, almost done with this overview. So things are beginning to happen, if you become aware of a life-threatening situation, it's about to threaten the community, you see the creek about to overtop, or it is overtopping, call 911 and report it. Once you report it, if you know that you are going to be providing support, so you're not in danger, but you're going to be assisting people, notify Cadre that you're going to be doing that so that you're on our radar and we can make sure to keep you updated on what's going on. We'll contact the local jurisdiction. We'll notify other resources for our discussion with you on what else you might need. We'll update all of the function teams on what's going on in case they have additional support. We do coordination calls and coordination meetings. And what's the last one say? And we update all that information on the website. I have 2 monitors and they overlap. So sometimes if I wrote way down on the slide, I have to lean up. These are some of the functions: access and functional needs, disaster case management, donations for in-kind donations, food sourcing and distribution, emotional resilience, immigrant support, and shelter, housing, and unhoused. So we encourage and facilitate collaboration of organizations that are doing similar things so that they can share what they're doing, share best practices, figure out if we can work smarter and maximize the use of scarce resources. So during disasters, it's really good to be connected to everyone else that's doing what you're doing to make sure that we're not duplicating effort. These questions are questions we asked last week, but these will be questions that we ask you on every call when we're having a disaster. And so these are just things that you probably want to make sure that you're capturing, because, for example, does your organization have damage, and what type of damage is it? Well, we want to know if you can still function, but we also want to be able to report to the city or the cities, whichever city you're in, or the counties, what kind of damage you had, because the county as a whole has to come up to a certain financial threshold in disaster in order to be considered for a state or federal emergency declaration. And so we want to make sure that we're capturing the dollar value of all the damage. If your clients have damage, there'll always be a link where you can report that damage right straight to the jurisdictions. Are you welfare checking any of your clients? And do you have anything to report from that? Is your communication methods working? And do you provide any relief supplies, or are you planning to? So that's all of the, those are the types of questions we would want you to be able to answer, just to be ready to coordinate with us. And just a couple things that we caught from the last meeting that we had. One is there was a new apartment complex. It is a low-income apartment complex. It's right at Blossom Hill and Snell in San Jose. So it's, it's not out in an area that we wouldn't be paying attention to, but no one knew that it had a lot of seniors and a lot of people with access and functional needs there. And so it turned out that they had no power for 5 days, and they didn't call anybody. They didn't report to anybody. PG&E didn't get a notification. And so if you work with apartment complexes that could be vulnerable in a power outage or any other type of disaster, particularly power, PG&E has, they have a list of the vulnerable populations, and they notify them and check on them to make sure that they can still, that they have power and that they don't need anything. And then they partner with the jurisdictions and with Cadre to make sure that we can support that. So Catholic Charities ended up going out there and cleaning out about 80 refrigerators with a bunch of spoiled food and finding replacement refrigerated medicines. And other donations of food came in and other donations of supplies came in, and Catholic Charities was able to take care of all that for them. But if you're working with an apartment, please let us know the address. Or unless you have a direct connection to PG&E, just make sure that they have these folks on their radar so that we don't miss anyone, and make sure that the apartment managers understand that if the power is out, they could call you and you could call Cadre, and we'll talk to PG&E and say, this is a vulnerable community, and try to make it a priority. And I'm still not seeing any hands raised, so I hope you all found that hand raised is under the reactions. The types of resources needing depends on the disaster, but most organizations have something that could be needed, even if you never thought of it as a disaster resource. So, and things get to be in scarce supply. So consider how you might support the community in a way that you don't normally, and Cadre is here to help you figure that out, connect you with local government and talk about needs. Fuel is a big one because transportation is a big one. And if we run out of fuel, like in an earthquake or when the power's out for a long time, the gas stations don't have generators. And so we need to know where fuel is and where fuel is that is on generator power, and then work together to see if we can keep everybody up and running while we're bringing in more fuel from the outside. All right, one more, and then I think Rob, you'll be up after that. Just a few of the resources, medical baseline. Wait, and I'm going to copy all these and put them in the chat. Okay. So the medical baseline, that's a PG&E thing. It's a preparedness activity because you can't get into the medical baseline or on medical baseline in the middle of an event. It requires a doctor's note and jumping through a couple of other hoops. But once you're in the medical baseline, you get a discount, particularly if you have medical equipment that you need to keep charged. And that's how PG&E knows who did welfare check when the power's out, to make sure that everyone's getting the power to maintain their devices. And that link is in the chat. PG&E has an inconvenience fee. You don't have to do anything to get that fee. As long as you're the one paying the bill to PG&E, you will get a refund depending on how big the outage was. And here's kind of the criteria. So if it's 48 to 72 hours, you get $25 credit. 72 to 96, it's $50. 96 to 120, 75 and 120 or over, you get $100 max. So this doesn't help you if you're freezing, but it does allow you to get a little bit of compensation if you've had to if your food gets spoiled. But they also they have some other programs too. And once you're connected, now you don't have to do anything for this program in particular. If you pay the bill and they're going to just credit your account, but it'll take 4 to 6 weeks. So keep an eye on your account to make sure that you get it. Now you don't qualify if you're in some multi-unit apartments if you're not directly paying the bill. So if you're getting charged for your electricity from a third party, they're going to get the refund. So you can work that out however you want. Now, damage reports, again, make sure that you're tracking damage, and after an event, be looking for the link to report your damage so that we can try to make our financial threshold to get more resources into the county. Backup chargers, again, it's something that you can't really do as easily on the fly, but if you sign up for the disaster disability access and resources through the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, they can get you electric backup batteries to charge your devices, and the Independent Living Center can provide a lot of other services. So just make sure you have your clients connected to them. And then also right after the disaster, CalFresh has a disaster response, and they will reimburse for lost food. There are a couple of forms that have to be filled out. Unfortunately, for this event, Santa Clara County did not meet the threshold to be to qualify for this. But in the future, we always need to check there and make sure that if we are qualified, then we're definitely going to take advantage of that as well. All right, I'm going to skip Ray. I'm going to go to Rob because he's patiently waiting here. Okay. We want to welcome Rob Moore, who is a council member for the town of Los Gatos. And I just noticed in a newspaper article a few months ago, he was announcing the new program that Los Gatos is doing to support the unhoused community during disasters. And I wanted him to be able to share that with everyone. So welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Marsha. I appreciate it. Francie, your hand is up. Did you have something before I started?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, when PG&E pays, I'm sorry, the inconvenience fee to an apartment owner who has 100 units in there, does he get the $25 for each of the 100 apartments? Or does he just get
That's a
one
good
$25
question.
fee?
I will
'Cause if he
find out.
does, he should be giving it to all his tenants.
Yeah, I
And
will
if he
ask that.
doesn't, then he should be getting that, because that's how much it's really inconveniencing people.
Yes, good question. And I don't have the answer, but I will get it and send it out to everyone.
I know you will. Okay.
All right, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, I get that. I think that I get a lot of different emails during storms and things, but PG&E is probably at the top. So I am a Los Gatos Town Council member. I was elected last year in the 2022 election, and then I'm also I've been a CERT member since I was in high school. So I've been doing that, super active in my local CERT program. I'm a certified emergency medical responder. I did that at San Jose City College this past semester. Really enjoyed it. It's a really cool program. If any of you, it's like a step below EMT, to be able to provide, life-saving medical help to people in my community. And I also have gotten I've been trying to get more involved in sort of the emergency management network. And so I've taken a few classes with the county and things, and really have been enjoying this work. It's great. So outside of being a council member, I also work at the San Jose Conservation Corps. I used to run a homeless shelter at the county fairgrounds. It was an 85-bed homeless shelter. It was one of the kind of pop-up COVID shelters, and I got kind of thrown into managing that. So I've had a lot of experience with kind of the intersections between emergency management and homelessness. Obviously, homeless folks are some of the very most, if not the most vulnerable people in our community, especially in emergency situations when they're outside, when most of the rest of us are indoors. And so the town of Los Gatos had never really broached the topic of homelessness. It just wasn't something we had talked about. This is despite our last point in time count showing over 50 homeless folks in the town of Los Gatos, which is not, San Jose's 6,000, but it's not an insignificant amount of people. And most of those folks are people that grew up in Los Gatos or in the surrounding communities. Like 80% of them are from, kind of our immediate community. They're not, people coming from Florida or whatever. They're people that are members of our community, and so I felt a real responsibility to those people to do for Los Gatos to do our part to help support them. So the town of Los Gatos had a little bit of leftover ARPA money, which is the American Rescue Plan Act money that the Biden administration gave out to municipalities. And so it's one-time money. And so I got together with our some of our faith leaders who had been providing kind of basic shower services, food services to our homeless community for a while, and sat down to them and said, hey, what, biggest bang for our buck, I'm gonna try to go for $100,000. What can we do with that? And so we came up with a few different things. The one of the most important things, I think, is sustaining the existing services that communities have. So we put some money into to make sure that shower program could stay up and running. It's at a church, but they have to pay for cleaning fees. It's all volunteer based, but there's a few different costs there, and so wanted to make sure that that was sustainable. Same with the food program, and then we also came up with some money for trash, because like dumpsters and porta potties, because those are things that our homeless folks had no access to. There's no public bathrooms in the town of Los Gatos, so that was a real problem. But the most interesting thing that we decided to go after was the creation of a motel voucher program, or a hotel voucher program. And the intention here was that, Los Gatos was, because we had never really broached the topic of homelessness, because we hadn't done much there yet, we were starting at step 2, right? The faith community had kind of gotten to step 1, but if this is a 50-step process, we're like at the very beginning. And so we decided that we first needed to address kind of the safety and dignity of our homeless folks before we could get into, trying to get them into housing, because they really hadn't ever been provided any services. And so we had observed, and we actually had some homeless folks come into our town council meetings in the January storms last year, about a year ago, who had said, hey, I was up in a tree for 14 hours holding my cat and my backpack, because the creek flooded and I didn't, I was asleep. I live near the creek, and the creek flooded, and I was trapped, because how just the geography is basically that you have Highway 17 and the creek. And so if you're in between those things and the creek floods, you're stuck. And so we had folks that were, stuck until, our emergency responders could come and help them out, and the creek went down a little bit. And so we said, okay, so that we all collectively decided that was unacceptable. And so we decided that this motel voucher program would be the best way to address those real emergency situations. And so the parameters we put on this program were that folks could get access to emergency motel stays, nights in local motels. I can talk a little bit about kind of how that came together, but the parameters are that it has to be less than 32 degrees, over 100 degrees, over an inch of rain, or extreme wind conditions. And so those are kind of the emergency situations. We also have an option for people that have a serious medical issue can also access the motel voucher program. And it's been a huge success. This is all, so, in my role as a council member, I'm kind of on the ideas and the political will side, and really pushed for this. And unfortunately, my council colleagues kicked the 100,000 down to 50,000, which was okay. It was still, a good start. And actually County Supervisor Joe Simidian came in and provided the other 50,000 to kind of match my original proposal, which was fantastic. Huge kudos to him for doing that. And then it kind of became, okay, so Los Gatos town staff, how do we do this? This is a great idea. How do we make it happen? And so our town staff started working with our faith communities, because they really had the kind of expertise to, and they knew the folks really well. And so started working with them, and then, kind of created this trifecta where they started talking with our hotels in Los Gatos. We have 5 hotels in Los Gatos. And, I had talked with some of the hotel managers kind of preliminarily before this, before I, went after this, and they said, yeah, we might be interested. We need to, figure it out, but we're not opposed. A really good, kind of lucky piece of this is that the hotel industry is really doing poorly, and so they're, getting people, getting rooms occupied is good for them. But 3 out of our 5 hotels ended up being interested in after meeting with our town staff and the faith community, and they basically created this little coalition essentially, to work out the kinks and details of how this program works. And so it's been a huge success. I go and spend time with our homeless folks, whenever I can, every other Tuesday or so when they're getting food. And I always ask them, especially after big weather events, kind of how it's going. Like, what, are there any big issues with this? And the only thing they say is that they wish we could do it more. Is that they wish, they could, have more nights in the program. One kind of caveat that we had to create, and this was, unfortunate, but one of my basic political philosophies is not letting perfect be the enemy of good. So we had an issue where some of our homeless folks, 5 or so had previous bad interactions with hotels when they had, previously been put up. And so they're not eligible for the program. They have been like kicked out of the hotels. And so that's unfortunate. We're not, meeting the needs of everyone, which I would like to do. But so to date, we've activated the program for 16 nights. So there have been 16 kind of qualifying weather events, which has amounted to 150 room nights booked for a good 15 people. And not all of them, it's interesting, not all of them take it all the time. Not all of them use like kind of the max amount of days. It just kind of varies person to person. And we have had a few medical stays as well, which has been really great for people like getting out of surgery and things, so they don't immediately have to go back out to the street. And again, it's been, I think it's a really, it's different than I think what some other municipalities are doing. It's a little bit of a different approach, trying to start from that kind of dignity and safety level, and then building up to case management. So I'm working right now, kind of through our budget cycle, on getting permanent case management for our folks to get them to that next step of hopefully, I would love to get to a place where this hotel voucher program is defunct. There's no one for it because they're all in housing. But unfortunately, I think that's a ways off. And so trying to kind of do, as much as we can with limited resources. But I do think it's been a good testament to what a smaller municipality can do. Again, we're not San Jose, so I think it'd be really hard for San Jose to do this program, right? The demand would be probably too great. But there are a lot of municipalities like Los Gatos that have, 50, 100 homeless folks. And as we all know, the problem of homelessness continues to get worse. It's not getting better. And so all of us I think all of us as leaders and council members and things need to be stepping up to take care of our, the people that live in our communities. And so, yeah, if anybody has questions about the program, I'd be happy to answer. Yeah, Francie.
Fancy, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering, do you have any children in your homeless community? And because I was at an event last weekend, and I was talking to somebody from Agape, and he was saying that he said they don't see children in the homeless community much, and I said, where are they? Because we know they exist, where are the children? And he said that he felt that some of the homeless people hide the children because they're afraid that the county would take them if they found that their children were homeless, which is unfortunate on several levels. But I don't know if that's actually the policy of the county. I don't know if that's a valid fear. And I don't, if it is invalid, then they should be able to bring the children to get services and things without being afraid. I'm just wondering if you have children and if you know anything about that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we're not aware of any minors that are homeless in the town of Los Gatos. There's kind of, from a service perspective, there's I don't, want to be too broad here, but there's kind of two broad categories, at least in kind of a municipal perspective of homelessness. There's unsheltered homeless, right? The people that are out on the streets that really need the basic care the very most. And then you have people that are in their cars or couch surfing or, spend a few nights, in a little bit less dire of a situation. I think that there are probably minors in that kind of second category, but we're not aware of any minors who are unsheltered, which is good. The county has actually been really aggressive on their goal. The county stated goal is to eliminate I forget how they say it, but like child homelessness. And so they put a lot of money and effort into helping families. And so, the hope is that a lot of those folks are getting housed. I think that fear is probably legitimate too, though, that folks, worried about, the foster system and all those things. I think that's all real. We have folks that are, 18 and 19, and a lot of those folks have had really bad problems, with the kind of justice system and all of that. One thing I will share, though, is that San Jose, and this is something that I've only recently kind of come to learn. My girlfriend is doing a master's in homelessness at Columbia University, and she's specifically focused on youth homelessness in San Jose. And San Jose has the highest rate of youth homelessness in the country by a huge margin. We have 85 young adults, which is 18 to 24, out of every 100,000 residents who are homeless. The next closest is New York with 36, and then Los Angeles with 32. And so I think this problem of like young people being homeless is a really real one. And the fact that San Jose has by far the highest means that the problem's getting worse. And so we need to, plug the hole in the sinking ship if we are hoping to, make the problem any better. I don't know if that fully answered your question, but we don't have any minors that we're currently serving.
Okay, thanks. Shayna.
Yeah, thanks. I have a couple questions. First, I was wondering how referrals to the program work, and then also if you provide any other supportive services to folks that are in the hotels, or even food or anything like that.
Yeah, good questions. Thank you. So, a second question first. The short answer is no. Outside of the faith leaders, they will provide grocery bags or a variety of toothbrushes, kind of like hygiene kits and things, but no services, nothing I would call services. I'd really like to get us to a point where we are doing that, and that's why kind of the next priority for me personally in terms of funding is case management, because I think that we're not going to most of our folks, again, they've grown up in the town and things, and so they've been homeless there for a long time. They're not going to get housed on their own. Sorry, what was the first question? I already forgot it.
Referral.
Yeah, how the
Referrals. Okay,
referrals work.
Thank you. So that's interesting. So essentially, at the beginning of this program, the faith leaders and the hotels and the town all kind of created a list. And so there's a list with about 15 people on it. And these are folks that have been, basically cleared with the hotels, where the hotels have okayed them. We have added some folks since the program has started. It's really on a sort of ad hoc basis. So as someone becomes it's mostly from someone becoming aware of the program. A homeless individual saying, hey, this is great. I'm homeless in Los Gatos. I'm really interested in this. They get in touch with the faith leader. So I would say 9 out of 10 of our homeless folks in Los Gatos at least semi-regularly go to one of the churches to get, food or showers or whatever. And so they talk to the folks there, and they get vetted by the hotels to make sure they haven't had any disciplinary, they haven't gotten kicked out of the hotels before. And then they're also and this isn't necessarily disqualifying, but PD kind of looks at to make sure that they haven't had any like recent major violent incidences or anything. You know, we don't care about like drugs and things like that, but yeah, that's basically how it works. I will say, because of how limited our funding is, it's like, you know, really, really limited. And I wish it wasn't so limited. And I, you know, continue pushing my colleagues to invest more in this program. But we are really focusing on kind of the folks we've identified, and kind of trying to start with a, you know, kind of the approach of like a functional zero of homelessness, in that we know that if we had a bunch of new folks come in and say, hey, can we, you know, use the program, the funds would be depleted really quickly. We actually we already ran out of money and had to put more money into it, which is, you know, a good problem to have, in a sense that we're, you know, there's a lot of interest in the program, but the funding is a big limiting factor.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Francie, do you have another question? Francie?
Me?
Yep, your hand's still up.
Oh, I didn't put it down.
Okay.
But I am wondering, do the hotels give you a special rate or any kind of deal? Because they should.
Yeah, agreed. They give us a great deal, actually. So they're, you know, the average, so it's three different hotels that are all kind of, it's like a Best Western, it's like a little kind of motel inn, and the Los Gatos Lodge. They're all kind of at like different price points, you know, I think between like 125 up to maybe $200 a night, at the very most, for like a weekend at the Best Western. They give us a flat $75 rate, which is fantastic. We're really, really grateful for that. This is like a better lucky than smart sort of thing, where each of the managers of the three hotels at some point had each worked in social services. So like that is just so, you know, the faith leaders called it a miracle, right? And so really, really lucky that way, that each of them has been really kind and generous, and have really made this work when, you know, they could have just said no.
That's great. And I guess that when you place someone, then you notify one of the churches, because how would they know to bring groceries or other things? And do you have to ask that person permission to have people come and knock on their door?
Yeah, good question. So it's more of the other way around. So the person that gets placed will reach out if they need anything and they know who to talk to. And the faith leaders, I don't want to undersell the role that they played here at all. They're actually in some cases, they're sort of acting like a social services agency. So during the weekdays, the town is like the full administrator of the program, but during the weekends, a few, you know, amazing volunteers from a few of these churches, and it's actually just three churches in the town. They kind of run it, so they have access to the credit card, and on the weekends can put people in if there's an extreme weather event. We're pretty good about trying to look out into the forecast a good week in advance to kind of anticipate, and so we'll kind of like prepay for folks that'll reach out, and folks, there's a dedicated phone and a dedicated email for the folks that you know, they basically say, hey, is tonight, are we on for tonight, kind of thing, and they'll get a yes or no, depending on the weather conditions. But yeah, so the faith leaders are like really intimately involved, you know, at sort of the same level as staff, so they know whenever there's folks who are put up for a night.
That's great. Okay, Aparna's gonna have the last question. Francie, I promise you, we're gonna talk to Rob again and get some more information from him. So Aparna, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just wondering, how did you guys weigh kind of, or what made you decide to do like a motel stay program instead of like a congregate shelter in a public space? How did you kind of make that decision?
Very good question. Yeah, that was kind of, I just dropped my email in the chat. If anybody has questions, they want to reach out afterwards. Please feel free to reach out. Happy to talk about this or anything else. So yeah, that was basically an evaluation of like political will. And I didn't think that we would have, because this was the first, I am not in any bad sort of way. But I'm 25. I'm the youngest person ever elected to Los Gatos Town Council. The rest of my colleagues are over the age of 60, and haven't been super interested in addressing this issue. There's also a lot of, Los Gatos is a community that has some difficulties when it comes to supporting affordable housing, like a lot of our communities, right? But there's been a real hesitation to kind of address this issue. And I just didn't think that the congregate shelter was going to be a winning idea. I think a congregate shelter would be fantastic. I think that would be a really good thing to do. I would love to make that happen. We didn't have a location that really made sense, and we needed county support too, and I wasn't really feeling that for the congregate shelter. I also, as someone who ran a congregate shelter, I will, say, depending on kind of the population and a variety of factors, they can be really unsafe. They're not. I don't think that is like a congregate shelters or a. I think they're really good in emergency situations. I think for like kind of regular activation, they're a little bit more difficult. I know most homeless women who I've spoken with have had some sort of sexual assault against them at congregate shelters. They're just not, super safe places. The thing that I would like to get us to is more of transitional housing in the town. I think that's a little bit more winning from kind of where I'm, kind of trying to feel the temperature, trying to, whether that looks like tiny homes or, some sort of small transitional housing, I think is kind of the next step that I'm envisioning and kind of talking with the faith leaders. I think that a congregate shelter would be hard. And then, obviously permanent supportive housing is great. But that actually doesn't necessarily get our folks housed because you go through the county system. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer to your question.
All right. Thank you, Rob, very much for this great information, for being that champion in Los Gatos. And, we need at least one in every jurisdiction to make this happen. And I think you're a miracle there too, to just have all of your background and passion and to be elected to the board. So thank you for being there. And we look forward to talking to you some more.
Absolutely. Happy to talk more anytime. Thank you for all you all do. This is always great to be in a room with folks doing so much great work. So thank you all.
Thank you. All right, let's see here. I'm gonna pop back to the Ray Reardon slide. If I can find it. That one. Yep. Okay, so this is just Ray's report. It's just a recording of, if I can get to it, a recording of what he talked about. Oh. There we go.
Good morning. My name is Ray Reardon, and my apologies for my video not working. It's down today for some reason. In terms of notification, we started notification to the encampments along the river and all the water streams. We did not pick a particular water stream to do. We actually went through all the river locations, waterways, to inform encampments starting last Saturday, a week before the storms came in. That was the use with our partners that communicate and affiliates that work with the homeless encampments along all the waterways. We had immediately extended Roosevelt from a 30-bed overnight warming location to a 90 And at the height, we had 73 people attend in terms of the largest, the most attendees in one night was 73 and 2 dogs. So we do make sure that these facilities have the capacity to take in pets because we do recognize that that is a deterrent for people to use those facilities. Not only did we do face-to-face communication with those folks, we sent out, we also used our long-range acoustical devices, which are loudspeakers that the law enforcement put on their vehicles. And we went starting on 2 days prior to the rains coming in. We did an evacuation order. We did declare or proclaim a local emergency so that we could evacuate along the waterway. At first, the notices were just get to high ground because the first storm that came in was not as significant as the second storm. When it came to the second storm, we did send out an evacuation notice using the same devices and uses the same contact with face-to-face with the people, the associations that help us notify those folks along the waterways. We did put out a specific area of flooding because the Weather Service indicated that it would happen, as did Valley Water. We work very closely with those agencies when storms come in. We have daily calls, if not 3 times a day, calls with both Valley Water and the National Weather Service to make sure we're targeting the right locations for our notifications. And again, we put out these evacuation orders and used our wireless emergency alert system to also communicate with people using their cell phones. We also work with the housing department because they have actual call lists to people who are along the waterways that have and want to receive warnings. So we also use that system as a way of notifying people. So there was a tremendous amount of effort that went out. We also used local social media, or excuse me, local TV media, radio media, as well as social media to get the word out along those areas as well. So we did a tremendous amount. We're way shoulders, people on shoulders better and advanced in how we're getting communication out than we did in 2017. So we definitely are getting the word out now. We cannot force people, even if we put out an evacuation order, a mandatory order. We cannot remove people. We cannot force them to move. We cannot take them to a shelter. That's all on their own accord in terms of how they, what they do with the warnings that we put out. That's because their freedom is freedom based on the U.S. Constitution, and we cannot force them to do movement into shelters. So I just want to make sure folks are aware of the actions that we take locally, how serious the city activates its emergency management organization. Before I came in 2017, it was 20 years before the city had put out any major response. And of course, the flood taught everybody about what we need to do and change our behavior patterns. And since I've been on 2017, we've activated our emergency management organization 16 times in the last 7 years. We have a very different approach and practice that we follow in the city.
Yeah, Ray. And for those of you that don't know Ray, he's been an emergency manager longer than me. And
38 years.
Gosh, dang. But tons of experience. He really has helped San Jose get to where it is now. And I applaud San Jose for taking those lessons learned and actually implementing. And yes, you absolutely are going way farther than ever before on how to reach out to people. And we appreciate that because you are the big dog in the county. So
and all communications, by the way, go out in 5 languages.
5, awesome. Thank you. And we do, well, actually, I'm not posting them in 5 languages, but I'll make sure I'm linked because I would rather have a link so it's always current than try to keep up with you because you put out a lot of information.
And lastly, we are working closer with the deaf community to start developing a relationship and having capabilities of going out that way as well.
Okay, our access and functional needs group would love to talk to you about that. Okay, so the picture that you see on the screen is a San Jose flash report. They put these out multiple times a day during a disaster. The link to them is on the Cadre flood page where it says city, county, town, special district. So you can always see those if you need to see what resources they have available. And they put out like 3 of them a day. And it's wonderful to get all the information without having to track it down. Okay, Andrew, I got a call from someone from your community development group that told us about another program that you have that I didn't know about. So do you want to talk about it? Or I will.
Was that in reference to the unhoused service providers network?
Yes.
Okay, sure. So I do sit in on those meetings from time to time, but we really do work with that network to just ensure that we are sharing information across the board. And when it comes down to it, when there is something going on in terms of inclement weather, we are sure to include them in the messaging so they can get out there, timely and notify those residing in or near the creeks so they can make those decisions for themselves, whether they want to relocate or not. Now, in terms of how Ray was discussing the process, our process is fairly similar. We're working with our partners at Valley Water and National Weather Service well ahead of the event to really identify potential impacts to our community and what actions we need to take. And we do have the ability to activate our inclement weather center. And just something to remember with our overnight warming location, it's a life safety facility. We're really only providing shelter from the elements. Restrooms and water is available to the community members who decide to utilize that facility. And so what we do is we follow the criteria that's outlined within the inclement weather plan at the county, annex at the county level. And something that's important to remember, these weather events may impact other portions of the county differently than we're being impacted. So we're not always going to meet that criteria, but we do consistently monitor and ensure that we are sharing communication.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great that you have that group, and I'm excited to get connected to them as well. I see that you also have, and so I guess they report every month, and then the link that I put on in the chat earlier for Gilroy, it has a link to all of the presentations that they've done for the last year, or maybe a little more than that. And they look interesting. I only got to listen to a couple of them, but Gilroy also has police officers dedicated to developing relationships with the unhoused and making sure that they get the services that they need. And there are 2 of them, and they're called quality of life officers, which is pretty cool. I've never heard that before. And that chart that you see for the first 10 months, which was last year, but they, the orangish tan, that was the services that were offered in 2022, which more services than reports, more reports than arrests. So and they connected 60 people with services. So it's a pretty successful program. Another best practice that other jurisdictions might want to get more information on. Anything else you want to share, Andrew?
The only other thing was that we are bringing on a new position. I don't know quite when that position begins, but it's the community and housing manager under community development. So that's going to be under the direction of community development director Sharon Goy, and there'll be 2 people in that division to provide support and guidance within that area of responsibility.
Awesome. Good. We'll get connected to them when they're on board. Thank you. Jennifer, I know you're on. I know Brian registered, but I don't think he is on. You want to just share about the, what Morgan Hill does?
Good morning, everybody. I have the privilege for working at the Office of Emergency Services for the City of Morgan Hill. And as you're all familiar, Morgan Hill sits to the south of San Jose and to the north of Gilroy. We are very fortunate that we have a director of housing, full-time position here in Morgan Hill. And underneath that role is Brian, who's our unhoused specialist. And Brian is out in the field. I see him often. We have a unique situation in Morgan Hill. We do not have a huge unhoused challenge here. So we're lucky that we have Brian that's out in the field. He's actually able to go out with blankets, and his ratio to the unhoused works well. So he's able to get out and get to know folks. When we had the recent rains, he was able to actually go out in person, which was really, really cool as well. And I see here that Brian has mentioned our overnight warming location at Community Christian. It is by referral. We began this service being very specific with who benefited from this opportunity. I will tell you, Marcia, that when things become complicated, I'm sure that you know we do open that up for a whole community. We have supplies at most of our faith-based organizations here in Morgan Hill, which is really cool. They've been trained in shelter operations and have supplies in shipping containers on site. Let's see, our police officers carry vouchers for hotels if they run across families or vulnerable folks in need. And we work closely with all of you and appreciate the share of your services. So that's my small little update, but we're very lucky to have Brian, and appreciate everybody on the call. I've been enjoying listening to everybody else's program. Any questions, Marcia, or anything you can think of that I could add?
So the Here For You hotline, did they refer to you for your owl?
I don't know. I'm so sorry, I'm not sure.
No, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, not familiar with that, but I should be apparently.
Well, and it's in San Jose. It's run by, oh, I know this, but I won't remember now. Shayna knows.
It's run by the Bill Wilson Center.
Oh, sure, okay.
Bill Wilson, thank you. And it's open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You can call and see if there is a space. Before San Jose opened their second overnight warming center, there was always a waiting list. And this last storm, they didn't even fill up. So that was good for San Jose. But I'm not sure. I need to find out more about how they connect, or if they connect to the other jurisdictions.
Yeah, that would be very good to know for
Yeah.
sure.
I'll find that out. Okay.
Okay, well, thanks for this valuable time together.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. And this is Palo Alto. I know they had registered to be here, but is anyone from Palo Alto on the call?
I am.
Ah,
So, apologies, I'm a little under the weather, but I actually did not know I would be presenting today, so this is cool.
yeah, that's no pressure. It's just whatever you're inspired to talk about right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Aparna. I work with an organization called Heart and Home Collaborative, which runs a cold weather women's shelter in Palo Alto. This year, for the first time, our organization partnered with the city of Palo Alto to open this overnight warming location. So it's a separate shelter, kind of, we serve all genders, but it's really a pilot program It's our first year kind of having it be open. And because it's a pilot, it's pretty small. So we're only open on the days when the county issues inclement weather alerts. We serve up to 10 folks per night. We're open from roughly 6 p.m. To 7 a.m. and housed at the downtown library in Palo Alto. So we are not currently taking referrals through the Here For You hotline. Excuse me. We actually have local service providers at the Opportunity Services Center and some of the local outreach teams doing referrals to us. And this is only because our capacity is so small. And there aren't too many other places locally people could go if we were to exceed that capacity. And I think we're trying to work on. We've had a few successful activations so far, so we're trying to at this point work on building up the resources that we're able to offer at the shelter, including meals and kind of case management and outreach teams. I'm happy to answer any questions if there's anything I didn't cover.
I want to know how the collaboration with the city plays out. What do they do and what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it really is the city's service. And I just want to say, when we opened, if you'll bear with me a minute, like when we opened Heart and Home, when we opened our women's shelter, that shelter is located in churches, and it's something we kind of did all by ourselves. And it took us like 2 years just to get the locations nailed down, get the permits in place, get all of the, administrative stuff taken care of. And I will just say, like, I'm so grateful to the city for kind of, for really seeing and responding to the need. And I think it's been so much easier to just, kind of get all of the pieces in place with their support there. So I think it really is their program, but they've contracted Heart and Home to manage the staffing and to kind of, manage some of the services in the program.
Thank you for doing that and for all of the work it took to get that in place. And again, every 10 people off the street is 10 people off the street. So that's wonderful. And we are planning to hold a couple of discussion groups for anyone that works in shelters to talk about challenges and, get some expertise from the Red Cross on how they handle certain situations. And so be on the lookout for that later this year.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, Francie?
Yeah, I'm wondering, and I wanted to ask Rob too from Los Gatos, do you list your program with 211 so that if people were to call in there asking for a shelter, they were in the right zip code, they would be referred to this number instead of the Here For You number? Because I'm not actually sure how the Here For You number worked over the weekend. I'm not sure if they were fully staffed and they immediately got calls. But I'm just wondering if all the programs that have overnight shelters are listed with 211, because I'm not sure they are.
So we are not currently listed with 211, and I think this was also just a strategic decision in the first couple of months of the pilot. I think these are all, the listing with 211, the listing with Here For You are all things we might do in the coming months. But I at least am very concerned about having, 20, 30 people show up, and we have a very hard capacity at 10, unfortunately, and there really are not too many other places people could go once they come to this location. There aren't, unlike San Jose, where there are many kind of similar services, Palo Alto, I think, has fewer options. So that's why we initially just wanted to see, kind of what, without that, how are we doing? And I think on average have been at about 80% of capacity. So we've had 1 or 2 empty beds each night. And now we're starting, and probably in the coming week or two, we're starting to slowly expand our referral channels. So for example, I think local PD might start referring to us this week. But yeah, that's a good question. I think that's something we're definitely considering for later on in the season.
Have you ever had too many people show up?
On our very first night, we did, yes. And the Here For You hotline was very helpful then. I think unfortunately the other shelter beds were closed. But yeah, since then we've been kind of at about 8 or 9 people.
Yeah, that's, it sounds like both you and Rob's programs are doing just fine without putting it out to the whole world. And yeah, and I think it might be helpful if we can figure out a way, if there is an opening at some point to, if Here For You's already closed, maybe we have a network where you can, or maybe it's that SPN email. It's like, we have 1 bed. Don't show up unless you reply here and tell us you're coming, and we'll hold it. Or something, so we hate to have anybody out in the cold if there is a room.
Honestly, I'm
available.
so open to something like that. I would absolutely love to discuss that. Yes.
Okay. Yep. Just maximize the resources and not overwhelm them. That's the goal. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Sorry to catch you by surprise. I like doing that. Okay, so this is the discussion part, and then we'll talk about next steps, have you fill out a survey that should pop up on your screen when the meeting ends. If it doesn't, I will send it to you again. It's just 5 questions. And so, again, I was going to do a breakout room, but I think we're small enough. Let's talk just for a couple of minutes, 10 minutes, or however the conversation goes on supporting storm activities. So if you support the unhoused, and there are a lot of storm activities but the unhoused are the most vulnerable during these extreme rains. Certainly neighborhood associations and chambers of commerce can put information out to people that are housed and tell them to be ready and give them examples of what to do to be prepared. But the unhoused, they're a moving target, and we need to be able to get to all of them. So do any of you do anything when you know that a creek is going to be evacuated? Do you go out to the creeks? Do you have any transportation to move people from a creek to an overnight warming center or to a congregate shelter like San Jose does? Do you provide any shelter? Or could you provide supplies? Like, for example, even if unhoused were in a shelter and it was an area that you normally worked, or supported that encampment, would you be interested in going to the shelter and making contact with the people there, maybe giving them supplies there? We have to figure out what that would look like, but just those are the kind of questions. And anything else that you want to talk about, what your organization does for the unhoused when there's a cold weather event like this. We'll talk about heat later in the year. Dana.
Hi, thanks. So again, I'm from the county's Office of Supportive Housing, and OSH is able to open up about 31 additional shelter beds when we have an inclement weather activation, and those are spread out at different congregate settings around the county. We also we ask the Bill Wilson Center, the Here For You hotline, to extend their hours. So during activations, they're open until 9 p.m. And that helps get additional folks into those beds that have opened up. The Here For You also does have transportation that they can provide if folks need it to get to those shelter sites. In addition, we work very closely with Valley Homeless Healthcare Program, and they'll send out outreach teams to various locations to get them information about the storm and to tell them about warming centers or other resources that might be available, and just make sure that they're aware that you know, rain or other, you know, cold weather is coming, and because a lot of folks out in the community are not really aware of, you know, that a storm may be coming. We also work very closely with a network of providers and advocates, and we do provide, the county through Destination Home is able to provide various supplies that can be distributed to folks out in the community, blankets, tents, tarps, you know, hand warmers, beanies, that type of thing, to help folks so they're not, you know, to put them at a slightly less risk of major impacts from the storm.
Thank you. The transportation, is it? I have a note here that they have one vehicle. Is that?
Yeah, sometimes they have more. I know the last couple activations, I think they've only had one vehicle available, but they do try to, you know, get as many people as they can. But sometimes it's sometimes it could take a little bit longer than we'd like, obviously, but they do have that resource available.
Okay.
So
well,
they have asked actually that, you know, folks be patient with them when on the transportation front, but they're trying to get as much as they can done.
Yeah.
And then also for this any activation lasting more than 2 days, we do request VTA transportation. So VTA will provide free rides to folks on buses or light rail who are accessing warming centers or shelters.
Why is it after 2 days? Just curious.
It's we've talked about it a lot, and we've kind of gone back and forth. I think we might reassess what we end up doing, but you know, I can't and I'm sorry, I'm also a little bit under the weather, so I'm trying to think through my like foggy brain here about what we discussed a year ago. But I think that was when, you know, you after a couple days you really start to feel more of the impacts of the weather, and especially and this applies to both heat events and cold weather or rain events. So, and you know, VTA does have a process that they need to go through in order to approve the transportation, and I think that is part of it. It's not like you can just flip a switch. It takes a little bit of time for them.
Okay.
I have a question. I was thinking about this before, and I was wondering, you know, if it couldn't be just automatically approved anytime there's an inclement weather declaration, then that wouldn't have to happen. It wouldn't have to be done each time, because we've met with VTA. It always seems to be a confusion, and it's hard to do outreach to tell people that that's available when we have to look at the timing and you know, I mean, it's not available now, but it will be tomorrow or the day after tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I understand. And I think I've heard, I think there are ongoing discussions with VTA about how we can streamline the process and make it simpler.
There was, you know, on Ray Reardon's presentation before, it wasn't on his recording, but he mentioned that they had free taxis. But I didn't get a chance to ask him how people would actually access that, because it's you know, that's often the issue, is there is free taxis, but they have to be asked for by Home First or somebody on the staff of the city or something. You know, it's like for homeless people to actually figure out how to get that, they can't just call a taxi. And so we're never really clear when we're trying to share with other organizations that there's transportation. How do people actually, what do you have to do to get it? You know, and does 211 know about it? So those are my questions.
Yeah, and I can't speak to the city of San Jose's program, unfortunately. So I'm not sure how the
I'll
access
get that
works
answer.
there.
I'll get that answer. I believe it the flash report said how to do it, but I'm afraid to try to look at it right now because I don't want to mess up the PowerPoint. But I will get that and also share that when I send out the document with all of the resources and information that we know about. Anyone else? Aparna?
Thank you. I actually have a question, and please let me know if this is not an appropriate space for this question. But when it comes to supporting storm activities, one of the things, one like very specific thing I was wondering was, what should we tell people to do during like business hours, like daytime hours, this coming Monday, which is President's Day? So at least in North County, all of the cities that I called their libraries, which are their usual daytime warming centers, are closed for the holiday. All of the drop-in centers I know of are closed for the holiday. And of course, people can go to a coffee shop or something, but those are usually only for paying customers, and not everybody has that money on them. So I'm curious, and I actually called the South County Owls, who are also not sure what to tell their clients to go when the shelters were closed during daytime hours. I'm curious if folks here have any thoughts on that.
I can tell you that the county coordination call is at 3 o'clock today, and I will ask that question. That's happened a lot. Because this is a milder event, they may choose to keep them closed, but in the past, when we've had really cold weather, they've brought in disaster service workers and opened specifically to do that. So let me see what their plan is, and I will share that with everyone as well.
Yeah, and I can tell you too, I know the county libraries will also be closed on Monday.
Okay. So, yeah, so let's see if we're just going to leave that as a wait and see through the weekend, or and deal with it on Monday. We'll find out.
When you ask them on the county call this afternoon, can you also ask them, I've never been clear about how many people don't go in because they don't allow their dogs unless they're service animals. Because I know that is an issue, but nobody keeps count of who doesn't come in. And I'm wondering how many people have dogs. There's an amazing number of dogs in some homeless camps. And I've never gotten a good answer about that. If they're not service animals, nobody's going to go in and leave their dog out in the cold. So,
Yeah, that's a really good
check on
point. There's a law now. I couldn't tell you what the reference is, but there's a law that every jurisdiction has to have at least one shelter that accepts animals. I really would like to get the animal community involved in this so that they can just focus on taking good care of those animals while their humans are trying to stay warm as well. It is a little complicated because dogs don't get along and people have allergies, and but we can definitely continue to try to work that out and make it better for everyone. And we have had people come to cooling centers with dogs that were not service animals, and they were also not homeless, and they were turned away. So that's something, it's new, and we have to keep improving it so that everyone has the access they need when they need it. Let's see. Anybody want to share anything else about the unhoused, or we'll switch over to talking about shelters and warming centers and what types of support? Okay, now we do have Ann Heresy from the Red Cross here. So if you have anything specific to Red Cross shelters, she can give us some answers. If you're interested in supporting an existing shelter, either by volunteering or coming in to contact unhoused folks, we can talk about how that might look. And also if you are interested in being part of a warming center, if you're looking for partners, maybe it's a faith organization, but they can't do it every time, but maybe if 2 or 3 different faith communities come together, maybe they can take turns and offer a little bit more relief. Anybody have any thoughts on that right now? We could have a whole nother discussion. Anne, I'll let you go first from the Red Cross. You're muted.
You're muted, Anne.
Can you unmute? Should be able to unmute. Well, let's work on that. Let me go to Aparna.
I'm so sorry to be annoying. So I think one of the things I just wanted to bring up, and this is not, I mean, I know that weather forecasting is a really difficult job, and Santa Clara County is a huge county, so this is not meant as an attack in any way, but I think I have felt that there were at least 4 days this year when I wish I wish there had been kind of an activation issued. And there wasn't one. So these were days when potentially North County had different weather than other parts of the county because of the microclimates, or there was there was kind of like just one standalone day with a lot of rain, and like temperatures below 40. But I guess like what I'm wondering is a couple of things. So I think number one, I'm actually very curious, like what is the kind of research and methodology, research behind and methodology, kind of, through which the county is issuing these activations, because I would love to educate myself about how these decisions are being made. And the second thing is, what is if I have kind of feedback about, these feedback like this about activations for the county, what's the best way to communicate that?
Well, there are 2 ways. If you have a relationship with the city, you could talk to them. If you don't feel like you're being heard, you can check with Cadre, and we can talk to Shana at the Office of Supportive Housing or call a meeting. Especially when something's happening, if you have concerns, then I would reach out. We would reach out to the city and the county and try to come up with a solution. And that's why we're trying to create this unhoused network too, to see who might be available at any given time to provide additional support if it's needed and we hadn't planned for it. I would like everything to be planned out, but I don't have those answers yet. And the county, Shana has, there is a inclement weather plan. It's being revised, but it has criteria. I couldn't tell you what it is right now, and I don't, if she wants
Yeah.
to.
I can talk a little bit about it. And I try to monitor the weather countywide. And obviously and make a decision based on the forecast. And it can be a little bit of a challenge because, sometimes things will change at the last minute and the storm ends up being stronger than what was forecast, or it ends up being a bit colder. So it's a little bit of a balancing act there. But Aparna, please do reach out to me directly as well if you see something, and you have any concerns about a time when you think we should be activating, but you don't see that we're doing it. We are currently working on updating the inclement weather annex to be a little bit more, give us a little bit more leeway in terms of when we can activate. Currently, for rain events, it really has to be 2 2 days of heavy rainfall, 2 consecutive days, and that, you know, as we're seeing now with with the soil saturation, just one day could cause a major impact. So we're gonna try to loosen that a little bit in order to provide just a little bit more leeway for us to activate more frequently if we need to. Does that answer your question a little bit, Aparna?
No, yeah, that's very helpful. I think I'll definitely reach out. Part of it is I have oftentimes a lot of the Palo Alto service providers calling me, asking me, why aren't you open today? And all I really can say is, because there's no county activation. It would be
Yeah.
good for me to have kind of some more context as to why there is or is not. So yeah, I will definitely reach out. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can share with you, you know, our current triggers and also, you know, what we're planning to modify it to.
Okay, great. Can you put your email in the chat so she has it?
Oh, I have, I think you have
Oh,
it, right, Aparna?
Maybe earlier. Oh, do you have it, Aparna?
I do. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, cool. Okay, anyone else thoughts about that? Anne is having a problem that she's unable to unmute. Anne, do you want to call me? I don't know how the audio will be, but I don't even know if I
Can
can.
you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
All right, I switched from my phone over to a computer. So
Okay.
the phone would not let me unmute. So at the time when I first raised my hand, you were talking about Red Cross, and I thought perhaps I should mention Red Cross's role and how we can support and what our you know what falls within our mission. That okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. First of all, when we're talking about the normal warming centers and cooling centers and that activity, which is generally there to help out the people without homes during weather events. That particular those programs are not within our mission. That isn't something that Red Cross does. What we do, and when we open shelters, it's when we're having a large weather event, and it's commonly understood to be a large dangerous event, and general evacuations are going on, and EOCs are opening, and a city or a county might request that Red Cross open the shelters to support an evacuated population. And to us, that doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter where that population lived prior to the evacuation. We commonly have people whose houses are damaged or unlivable in our shelters, as well as people who were homeless previous to the disaster in our shelters. And so, but for the regular warming and cooling shelters, we have no role, other than we have sometimes been asked to supply some cots to help out with some blankets, and we can do that. But we do not run those shelters. Any questions?
Nancy has her hand up.
Oh, well, it wasn't for this. It was, in a way it was, there was, you know, in the storm before, there was issues with when we did open a shelter at the Red Cross for the homeless people that were being evacuated. But again, there was confusion about giving information to 211 or sharing the information with people who were not homeless, but who had to leave their homes because they had a tree in their living room. And there wasn't really enough of them to open a shelter, and nobody knew where to send them. And there was, you know, questions about whether they should be sent to the open shelter that the Red Cross had, which of course we would take anybody that showed up there that had to be in there. But it just wasn't clear to everybody how that worked. And I was also thinking about, you know, the programs that in Palo Alto and Los Gatos, if there was a person with a house that had a tree in their living room during a storm and needed to go somewhere, would they be acceptable in the voucher program or in the OWL because of the emergency, or is there nothing for them in, for that immediate night?
I don't have an answer.
Ready?
I can ask the question.
It's I mean, it was just, I know I talked to 211 and I talked to people at the city and the county, and there was just confusion because they felt that, the city felt the shelter was open for a certain thing. And I'm sure in Palo Alto, they have limited space and it's open for a certain population. But in an inclement weather situation, if there's a person who had a home but can't use it because of the disaster, there doesn't seem to be anything planned for them right away, unless they have money to go to a hotel by themselves and then try to get reimbursed for it later.
Yeah, so there, I mean, there definitely is a gap there that we can ask about and see what is there a contingency? If there aren't enough people to open a shelter, do you put them in a hotel? Or like people with houses, if they have homeowners insurance, their insurance should put them up in a hotel if their house is not safe. But we know that a lot of people don't have insurance. So what is that contingency plan if it's 5 people? You can't just say we can't shelter you because they're displaced and they have a need. So we'll talk about that some more. That's
especially if there is a shelter open for homeless people and with beds available,
yeah.
if we wanted to go there. But it's just, it would be good to have a list of all the cities and what should we tell people in those cities if that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have to create that.
And,
Okay.
by the way, when we have our shelters open, anytime Red Cross opens a shelter, so it wouldn't be just a homeless shelter. I mean, everybody is welcome, and we can partition out the sheltering a bit. We've often have the need to have a family room, and then maybe singles or females in one room, female singles, male singles, like that. And so we would accommodate anybody who needs that space. But the difficulty we run into sometimes is that the messaging we have is a little different than, say, what San Jose might be, San Jose may be reaching out to a particular set of folks, whereas Red Cross would be messaging to all. So there is sometimes a disconnect there.
Okay, we need to work on that communication link too, between the cities to make sure we're saying the same thing or not conflicting. Thank you. And Shayna put in the chat that she forgot to mention that Office of Supportive Housing sometimes does declare a partial activation for a specific area. So just as we were talking about, if you do feel like your area is being impacted more than the rest of the county and maybe it's not on anybody's radar, just make the call or email Shayna and she will be there. I also see Becca Berggren put a note here with a friendly reminder to coordinate with Jackie from the county for mass care shelter requests and VOAD. That is only for the unincorporated area. The rest of it just comes straight to Cadre, and we work directly with the Red Cross and the cities. So I wanted to make sure that gets confusing sometimes. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew that. And so what's next? There will be a webinar survey. It should pop up when this closes. So make sure that you fill that out. It's 5 quick questions. Photos. So if it's really a good idea now that nothing's happening to take some pictures, the before pictures of your property, whether it be your office or your home, to show the impacts afterwards. It's a lot easier to prove that it wasn't pre-disaster damage when you have pre-disaster pictures. So just take some photos and keep them on hand if there are any specific areas that you expect might receive damage. We'd have a survey, I put it in the chat a while ago, for anyone that's supporting the unhoused. I mean, we're looking for everyone that does anything to support the unhoused. We have a pretty good representation from the nonprofits and not a good representation from the faith community. And I know that they do a lot. So we're trying to identify everyone so we can have a conversation on how we might be able to share information and services. Lastly, if you are not a cadre partner, if you haven't officially filled out the cadre partner agreement, I highly recommend that you do that. Because if you're not on our list, then you may not get notified if we send out information, and we want to make sure everybody's in that loop. That's the kind of the bare minimum as being a cadre partner, as being part of the network of communication. And then you can participate in other coordination efforts as you see fit. Any other questions? Thank you for all of our speakers and for all of your good participation today. It's always nice to get things clarified because disasters are complicated. And so anytime you come up with a what if question, let's get it answered for you so that we can be as ready as we possibly can be. All right, I'll stay on for a minute or so if anybody has questions, but thank you all for being here, and we'll see you at the next meeting.